Jasmine was scrolling through her phone in the back seat when the officer's flashlight hit her window. She wasn't driving, she hadn't done anything wrong, but within 5 minutes, that officer had her on the shoulder, answering questions about passengers' rights during a traffic stop that she didn't know she had. By the end of that night, Jasmine was in handcuffs. Most people assume that if you're just a passenger, the traffic stop has nothing to do with you. That assumption is exactly what police count on. And one of the tricks I'll walk you through today is so subtle that most passengers don't realize it's happening until they're sitting in the back of a squad car. The first thing an officer does when they approach the passenger side of a vehicle is start a friendly conversation. Hey, where are you two coming from tonight? How's your evening going? It sounds harmless. It feels like small talk, but everything you say during that exchange is being recorded and going to end up eventually in a police report. Officers are trained to get passengers talking because passengers are usually less guarded than drivers. The driver knows that they're being evaluated. The passenger thinks this has nothing to do with them, so they let their guard down. That's the moment an officer is waiting for. A casual answer like, oh, we just left the bar in Las Olas, now gives that officer information that they can use against the driver and potentially against you. In Jasmine's case, she had mentioned that they had been at a birthday party. That one sentence gave the officer a reason to start asking follow-up questions about alcohol, about who was driving when they left, and about whether she'd noticed anything unusual about the driver's behavior. As a passenger in a car, you are not required to make conversation during a traffic stop. A simple, I'd rather not answer questions, officer, is completely within your rights, and it's the smartest thing you can say. Here's where it gets tricky in Florida. Officers will ask a passenger for their identification during a routine traffic stop, and most passengers will hand it over immediately because they assume they have to. But Florida law does not require a passenger to carry or produce identification during a traffic stop unless the officer has reasonable suspicion that that passenger has committed, is committing, or is about to commit a crime. Simply being in the car during a traffic stop is not a crime. Sitting in the passenger seat during a traffic stop is not reasonable suspicion of a crime. Now, an officer can always legally order you to step out of the vehicle during a traffic stop. The Supreme Court has established that clearly. But ordering you out and demanding your driver's license are two different legal standards. Officers blur that line on purpose. They'll often say, I need everyone's IDs, and passengers comply because the authority in the voice make it sound like a legal requirement. It often isn't. If you choose to provide your name verbally, that's different from handing over your physical ID. Understanding the distinction between a lawful order and a request, framed as a lawful order, is the most important thing a passenger can learn before riding in someone else's car. This is one of the most effective tricks officers use that most people never see coming. During a traffic stop, the officer will separate the driver and the passenger. They'll either sometimes have one of them step out of the car, or they'll position a second officer on the passenger side. Then they ask both of you the same questions independently. Where are you coming from? Where are you going? What were you doing tonight? If the answers don't match, the officer has what they consider an inconsistency. That inconsistency becomes their justification for digging deeper. Suddenly, that routine traffic stop turns into a vehicle search, an extended detention on the side of the road, and an arrest. The separation technique works because passengers aren't prepared for it. Drivers expect to be questioned. Passengers don't. And when you get caught off guard, you're more likely to say something that contradicts the driver. Not because either of you are lying, but because two people naturally remember details differently. You might say you left the restaurant at 10 p.m. The driver says it was closer to 11 p.m. That 1 hour gap becomes the officer's narrative that something doesn't add up. And suddenly, both of you are now being asked to step out of the vehicle to be detained on the side of the road. If you've ever been a passenger during a traffic stop where the officer pulls this exact move, tell me about it in the comments. I want to hear about what exactly happened. An officer can order you out of the car. That part is well-settled law. But what happens next is where your rights really get tested. Once you're standing on the side of the road, the officer may ask, do you mind if I pat you down real quick? Or, you don't have anything on you I should know about, right? These are consent requests disguised as commands. A pat down requires either for you to consent or for the officer to have reasonable belief that you're armed and dangerous. Simply being a passenger in a car that got pulled over for a broken taillight does not meet that standard. You can say, I don't consent to a search of my persons. Be calm, be clear, don't physically resist if they proceed anyway. That becomes evidence your attorney can use later. But if you say, sure, go ahead, you've opened the door, and anything they find becomes admissible evidence. Officers know that most passengers will agree to a pat down because the authority of the situation feels overwhelming. Standing on the shoulder of a highway with a squad car, lights flashing, most people just comply. That instinct is understandable, but it's exactly what the officers are relying on. This is the one that catches most passengers completely off guard. If an officer finds something illegal during a vehicle search, such as drugs, a weapon, contraband, and it's in the common area, like under the seat, in the center console, or even the trunk, everyone in that car can potentially be arrested under Florida's constructive possession doctrine. That means you can be arrested for something you didn't even know was in the car, something that didn't belong to you, something you've never even touched. The officer doesn't need to prove it's yours in that moment. They just need to establish that you've had knowledge of it and the ability to control it. That determination often comes down to the statements made during a traffic stop. If you told the officer you knew what was in that car, or if you reached towards that area where the contraband was found, those details become the prosecutor's evidence. This is why staying quiet, refusing to answer questions, isn't just smart. It could be the difference between you being criminally charged with possession of contraband or the case getting dismissed. We covered the driver's side of traffic stop tactics in another video. And the general tip for what every driver should do during a stop are in a separate video as well. Between those and what we covered here today, you have the full picture of how these encounters actually work. If you found this helpful, watch our video on what every driver should know when they get pulled over. Between that video and this one, you'll have the complete picture of how traffic stops really work. If you or someone you know has been charged as a passenger during someone else's stop, Lawson and Simmons handles criminal cases across Broward County, Palm Beach County, and Miami-Dade County, and our number is in the description.